Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a somewhat, although that's kind of becoming the norm nowadays, overdue episode of the Gitcast podcast with me, Gitbag the Great. And today with me, as ever, is my reliably faithful and
stalwart,
haphazard on the battlefield companion, Flash Presser.
Cheers.
I wait. Why did you not even question that?
Well, to be fair, I think a bit of self-awareness goes a long way, and neither of us have really covered ourselves in glory in most of these podcasts.
No, well, that's the thing. It's kind of hard to sort of contain a level of. I sent you a platoon invite, by the way. But
So I've been looking at the World of Tanks rebalance stats online. Hang on.
But yeah, it's kind of hard to sort of maintain a continuous level of concentration once, you've got yourself in a rut, not a rut, but in a role of speaking about something interesting. But alas, that is kind of what you have to buy into here with the Gitcast podcast, especially when it's one with me and Phil on broadcasting. But yes, as I said before, sorry about not having uploaded any of these in a while, but I hope you guys will enjoy this video. In any case, as we mean to go on, and as we start every other episode of the Gitcast podcast, how have you been since the last episode?
Well, in such a sort of lengthy time period as has transpired since the last episode, quite a lot has, of course, happened, and I won't get into the minutiae, but at the moment things have developed towards more serious job searching and future planning for what happens after my current work contract expires and what I plan to do after the summer, and indeed during the summer. I recently went to a rather nice party given by one of my friends here in Berlin, whom I'm on sort of casual terms, who is a fellow scuba diving enthusiast.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we were able to sort of share some stories, and that's always fun. I haven't been able to do any scuba diving for quite some time now, actually, on account of
Berlin being quite far in the country.
Yeah, that, and like most of my equipment being still in the UK, and of course the fact that for the while when I was still a member of the club at the university, there wasn't really that much opportunity for diving since we kind of lacked the resources, and often bad weather kept us held back, really.
Yeah. Must have been so gutting, considering it's one of your key interests.
Yeah, I mean, I like the club a lot, but particularly in the last 2 years or so when I was at the university, it just was really hard to ever actually get any proper diving in.
Why's that?
Well, it takes forever to sort of organise a dive, particularly with about 20 people if they all want to go. But the thing is, you need to have a kind of a minimum number to justify going out, and it gets very stressful for the people trying to organise something like that.
Do you feel it's more pertinent and more the case with diving than a lot of other physical exercises you have enjoyed in the past?
Definitely. I mean, sure, for something like kickboxing, you need the instructor there in pretty much every session.
Yeah.
To sort of just direct it. Whereas in a scuba diving expedition, everyone can be fairly equal, and there doesn't necessarily need to be a sort of training or practice element. But managing the resources, planning for things like tides that you have to take into account, planning on how to get the boat out, planning the oxygen and the diving, and that isn't necessarily too much of a difficulty because we're all taught how to do that and we're all capable.
Yeah.
But it's something that is quite intense in the sort of planning phase and the execution, and basically there can only ever be 2 days warning, so that you're going to have decent weather, or that you're going to be able to get the requisite number of people to justify the trip.
Yeah.
that was always the main worry, and also particularly after a while, our club committee sort of lacked a lot of the really experienced divers that we'd had, particularly in my first and second year, which had really been the high point of my time in the club.
Well, it's kind of a bit different, of course, with the main club that I've attended during my time at Sussex Uni, where which is the Sci-Fi and Horror Society meeting, where they're kind of lackadaisical and very laid back approach to managing the society was kind of a given, and kind of was quite welcome, considering that you don't want to be too restricted or drawn back when you're just voting on and watching sci-fi and horror films. But yeah, with something like as big an undertaking and as time and money consuming as a high risk physical exercise like diving, I guess of course a lot more responsibility in the organisation is probably a lot more important, right?
Definitely. You really need a sort of strong committee in a club, and we kind of lacked that. I was just like the guy who took the minutes, and I was the sort of photography and blogging kind of chap. I was the communications director, so it was
didn't you
not really my role for the actual organising of the dives. I wasn't really experienced enough to sort of handle major responsibility in that regard.
Didn't you get kicked off of managing the YouTube channel for their society as well?
No, I didn't get kicked off. I didn't run for a committee in my last year at university.
Oh, right, okay. So
because it wasn't sort of clear whether I would sort of be able to. It wasn't clear that I would be having another year at Sussex.
Okay. I swear I couldn't remember, because you said I don't know if you said they had been unhappy with you for using their YouTube channel to subscribe to a number of other things.
That was just something that I did in the first week, and I immediately unsubscribed again afterwards.
All right. Were they not too pleased about it?
Not really, no. Which is a bit ironic, given that I was the only one who really used it, and I'm kind of disappointed, to be honest. In the 2-3 years or so since I stopped managing, they haven't made a single new YouTube video for the club.
All right. You'd at least expect, with the addition of the social media function on YouTube's platform now, that they at least somewhat use it for posting up updates, even if
exactly that kind of thing.
Even if it's just for 2 or 3 subscribers, it's might as well use it for something.
Precisely.
But what else have you been doing recently, apart from career related stuff and going to a divine little barbecue?
Well, apart from that, I have, that's actually a difficult question. I mean, other than work, I haven't really been able to do that much, because I've been quite badly ill, both with allergies and various illnesses, largely contracted from my little sister, bringing them back from school, that kind of thing. It's the usual thing. She gets sick, then Mum gets sick, then I get sick. So I haven't really been able to do any swimming or anything, but I've been keeping up with my cycling and having good fun with that.
Yeah.
And, I recently went on holiday. Some people may have seen Gitbag's vlog of our trip to Chichester.
Yeah.
The latest one. That was during a trip where we were once again able to go to the Sci-Fi and Horror Society again, have a little reunion of that. I went to visit my grandmother,
also where we
of course.
got to see some peregrine falcons.
That's right, we did, yes. Had great fun.
Again,
you only got a very brief glimpse of them this time. The best time was when I went to Chichester the first time, actually, and saw the peregrines.
Do you think it's better to see them during, say, summer or something like that?
A couple of months later, yes, because we saw them about 2 weeks after they'd started nesting. So they didn't have any babies. So the RSPB didn't have the cameras mounted in the nest, and they weren't flying as intensively because they didn't have the need to care for 3 or 4 children sometimes in a brood of peregrines. And unlike things like, say, golden eagles, the chicks sort of they all hatch at the same time, so they can't kick each other out. And they're actually quite cooperative birds, unlike many raptors.
Hmm.
So yeah, basically, the parents fly absolutely non-stop, alternating or sometimes being both out at the same time, just to get enough food to feed all the growing chicks. So basically, June is when you want to go, when they're sort of at their height. But we were lucky to catch a glimpse of one this time.
Yeah. Again, much like a number of my other vlogs in the past, this one included a lot of footage of food.
Yep, definitely.
I actually remember, like, a while back, like, I was talking to one of my pen pals, who I play Overwatch with, or I used to at least, and he once recommended he do a meme video of my vlogs and my America vlog mini series that I did back in 2017, and he said the idea of it would be Gitbag the Greatest America Vlogs, but every time you talked about food, the video gets more distorted. And then I remembered virtually every one of those 5 videos in that mini-series had like about like half of the video of footage of each video just being of me eating some sort of huge American food, or like some sort of Americanization of some other food. I just realised, like, by the end of it, it would just be, like, static and just bass.
Yeah. Now I remember seeing your some of your America vlogs, and they all look really good. Not to mention your trip to was it Cyprus with your mum?
No, it was Kefalonia and
Oh,
Ithaca,
Catalonia, cool.
which are a pair of really lovely little islands just off just off the western coast of Greece. Just a little bit further south from Cafu. Oh no, sorry, Corfu. I mean, but yeah, no, they are really, really nice places. Ithaca, in particular, is very, very natural and just pretty.
Yeah, they're the Ionian Islands, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah, they are, and also Ithaca is a really good scene for getting really good fish or olive-related products.
Sounds grand. I might have to go.
Yeah, no, it's really lovely, and it's just a naturally beautiful island. Kefalonia is probably less naturally beautiful, but it's still really lovely. It's got much more varied wildlife, I feel, and there's a bit more to explore because it's just, although that is mainly because it's a larger island, and what else? And it's a little bit more touristy, so there's probably a little bit more, in quotation marks, westernized sort of entertainment there. So if you want to do that sort of thing, that's more up to you. But yeah, no, they're both really nice places to visit. And I think travel to Greece is usually a bit cheaper over the last few years, anyway. So because of
Yeah.
the recession
Speaking of
there.
my friend who went scuba diving, sorry to interrupt. He went scuba diving on the island of Rhodes, and
Yeah.
according to him, the diving, of course, was the most expensive part, but the accommodation and flights and so on for him and his friend, it was about €700 each
That's pretty good.
for a week's stay in Rhodes.
For such a nice sort of scenic part of the Mediterranean, that's pretty bloody good.
It is, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. I mean, like, it sort of makes me think of that fire festival thing where, like, it was a massive scam, but they advertised it as being like, 2 weeks in the Bahamas, all expensive paid, for one person for $1,200 or about £1,000. And I was thinking, like, even though it's a scam, and even though they were complete scumbags, the people who organised that thing, that deal,
Oh, yeah.
think about it. 2 weeks, Bahamas, all expenses paid, including flights, for about just over £1,000. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, that really is. The Bahamas are quite an expensive place because they're so close to the USA.
But
From
yeah,
what I recall, yeah.
I wish I could go to the USA again sometime soon. I mean, like, I take the mickey out of the old Yanks every now and again, and like us, they've got a few issues in their country. But God, I tell you what, I do love America, and
Oh yeah.
and I even like the Americans despite rebelling against our imperialist rule. But live and let learn. You know, they did invent the corn dog after all, so I can forgive them a bit for that. But yeah, no, I would love to. I was watching that vlog mini series again recently, and I just thought, like, God, I'd love to go to America again soon. And kind of doing the vlog recently of like our recent trip to Chichester kind of reignited my interest in doing vlogs, and I might try and go out and do some more of them in the future if I ever get the chance.
Yeah, no, I look forward to seeing them. And I too hope to go back to the USA one day, possibly quite soon. I may even go this summer because I would quite like to visit some friends of mine in Brazil and maybe go scuba diving in Belize in Central America, which is apparently one of the best places in the world to go diving. And so basically I could work my way up, sort of from Brazil, stop off in Belize for a week, and then go up to New York and Philadelphia and see some acquaintances of mine there.
Yeah.
Because I've never been to New York and I really want to go, particularly since they have the world's oldest pizza parlor.
I can't really say much about it because, to be fair, I think the last time I went there I was about 6, and if you want an indicator of how long ago this was, the last time I went to New York, the most recent Pokemon generation I think was the second one. So, so you know, it's like that kind of gives an indication. Like I remember, I just have fond memories of watching my brother plod his way through Pokemon Gold, but I do remember having a good time there though, as young as I was, and the food in New York is just brilliant. Like the pizzas there are quality.
I believe it.
It's just brilliant. It's and the ice cream parlours there are really nice. They also have a really good range of delicatessens across the city. I think as well, I don't quote me on this, but I think Manhattan Island has the most McDonald's.
Coffee houses? What?
No, I think Manhattan Island has the most McDonald's per square mile out of any like intercity in America.
Yeah, I can believe that. Manhattan is the most densely populated area of the United States.
Yeah.
And yet it's nowhere near as densely populated as London, Paris, or Berlin.
No, not
That's the main thing you have to keep in mind when visiting America, is how spread out and big everything is.
Yeah.
If you're planning on visiting America, I really recommend a great book by the BBC's America correspondent John Sopel, and it's called If Only They Didn't Speak English.
Oh, right.
Because his argument is that if Americans didn't speak English, we'd actually see them as a foreign country, and a lot of the things they do wouldn't surprise us quite as much.
Yeah, that kind of makes a bit of sense, actually, because you think about the way that having a foreign language that different countries don't share kind of helps not bridge a gap, but at least contextualize it in a way where you feel like, oh, I have to learn about this sort of new culture. I must treat it with a bit more respect and a bit more wariness. But like with kind of the Americans and to a lesser extent the Dutch, because they speak, English.
Yeah.
Like, it makes, we kind of tend to just assume things, so it kind of makes us look like idiots sometimes.
It can do, yeah. Speaking of the Dutch, I went to Amsterdam for a few days after visiting you and my grandmother and going to Chichester. And I had a great time there. Amsterdam's a really lovely place.
I've always wanted to go to Holland and watch a Eredivisie match while drinking some locally brewed Amstel or something like that.
Only you would say, I want to go to one of the most culturally insignificant European countries, one of the former great powers, and go and see a football match.
Look, right.
I went to the Maritime Museum, climbed aboard an old
I wouldn't just go there to see a football match, alright? I'm just saying I have certain priorities, and I would like to do that. I'm not saying that's all I would do. I'd have to be pretty fucking dolty to do that. Hell, I'm probably most likely going to be going to Holland this summer actually,
All right.
and I'm going to be going there actually on a cycling holiday with my brother. What we're probably going to be doing is we're going to be going there for a week, or up to a week, I think probably, cycling across Holland because to be fair, it's a very flat, geographically speaking country.
Yeah.
And what we're basically just going to do is we're just going to cycle around Holland, stay in some Airbnbs and hostels, and go around drinking beer and cycling, and hopefully seeing a couple of historical sites.
Yeah. Sounds great. I also went to the Keukenhof, which is the huge tulip farm.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah. 7 million tulip bulbs
That's the thing
in
is,
one place.
like the thing is, you think like sometimes people will think like, oh, I can, that, that sounds like a big number, but it probably can't be all that big. But then if you see it in person, or if you even see it in a photo, you realise, holy shit, that is enormous. Like, 7 million is an enormous number, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and it's all done by hand. There's no machines at all.
Which is like even more amazing. Like, it's such like an underrated like national treasure.
Yeah, definitely. And they are constantly trying to invent new tulip varieties, and of course, the several hundred-year-old quest to create the black tulip is, of course, still ongoing.
That'd be fascinating if they can actually do it.
Yeah, at the moment, the closest is a very, very dark blue tulip
Mm.
that they've got, and I saw a couple of them.
I've been
They're
getting.
really amazing, but I wasn't quite there at the right time to really catch the flowers in full bloom. Need to go there about a month later.
I've been kind of getting a bit more into gardening and flowers recently because it just kind of helps me take my mind off of some certain things when I get a bit stressed about them. And
Yeah.
for Easter, my mum didn't get me an Easter egg. Instead, she got me a selection of plants. She got me a orchid, which is kind of starting to die off a little bit, which is really gutting. But like, to be fair, I'm still fairly new to taking care of plants. Then I've also got an aloe vera plant. One of the flowers is falling off, but that one's still a little bit more. That one's still far more salvageable. But then what's quite interesting is she also got me 3 miniature cacti, and I've just put them on the windowsill, and it's just really nice. It just adds a bit of colour to the room, and what's great as well is cactuses are just so easy to take care of.
Oh yeah, I've got one like right next to me, plus a rather nice little leafy plant. Yeah, they are cool.
Yeah, I was going to say that to any, like, not even just YouTubers and streamers like myself and Phil, but, like, to anyone out there, if you spend a lot of time in your room, try getting a couple of plants. It helps brighten up the place, might even help brighten up your attitude. I can't absolutely ascertain and assure that, but, it might help. And it just looks nice, and it gives you something extra to do.
Yeah, totally. I wholeheartedly recommend it. Now, these 2 plants were given to me by my little sister many, many years ago when she was in a big sort of plant phase.
Yeah.
And I kind of fully expected that I'd kill them all off, to be honest.
Don't let anyone take that out of context.
But, yeah.
Like one day, like if we ever get big on YouTube, like someone will just make like a Gitbag and Flash Suppressor exposed video, and then they'll just put in the middle like Flash Suppressor is a psychopath because he said he wants to kill them all off.
Yeah.
But
no, it's 8 years later and they've survived.
Yeah, and what kind of plants are
Despite
they?
my haphazard attempts to... What was that?
What kind of plants are they?
One of them is a very small fig cactus, and the other is... I actually don't know what it is. It's literally just very broad, quite thick leaves with sort of whitish discolorations on them. No blooms or no blooming of any kind.
Oh, come on, out of the two of us, I'd expect you to know more about, botany and fucking like flower identification.
Yeah, that's sort of the thing. I've recently found a book. I was cleaning out the cellar and I found an old book about plants and so on. I'm going to sort of have a read of it because it's not actually an area that I know much about. I mean, animals and birds particularly is my field of expertise, but I've always neglected flowering plants in particular.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's very strange because my mother was into gardening a lot when I was quite little, and but yeah, I don't know because I have sort of led a fairly outdoorsy life, going on outdoor holidays a lot. But yeah, that is a good question, and I honestly don't know why it never really appealed to me as much as looking at birds or geology. But I hope to rectify that soon.
Well, we can always hope.
Yep.
I've read it up in the P43 Terminator. Yeah, so I mean, I've kind of been, since the last episode of the Gitcast podcast, just been kind of doing much the same thing as Phil, looking at my own personal prospects and trying to apply for things for my future career. First off, I've been applying for financial jobs, pretty much mainly in either London or Brighton, although I've been applying for a couple in Leeds and Manchester as well, just in case. Mainly like graduate programs that would like kind of just train you up. But similar to Phil, and again, this is something I would really recommend. Apply for like sort of a secondary or even tertiary career as well. And to that aim, I've also been applying for like research and administrative graduate roles or training roles in either the government or like local organisations. So hopefully something comes up from any of those areas sometime soon, sooner rather than later. I did get an actual interview, or rather assessment day, recently at a financial company up in London. Wasn't successful, but it did teach me quite a few things. One thing is if they ask you to prepare a presentation, recite it more than twice. But
Yeah.
I guess like it's gutting as it is. Like that kind of thing is supposed to teach you through a series of trial and error lessons that will help you one day be successful with your dream job when you get to the job interview or assessment day stage. And then recently I've been experimenting a lot with my cooking. I'm getting a Sainsbury's delivery tomorrow. I should just say we are recording this on Sunday the 21st, Easter Sunday. By the way, happy Easter Sunday to all our watchers out there.
Indeed, happy Easter Sunday.
Hope you get lots of chocolate and you don't eat it too quickly. What else was I going to say? But yeah, we're recording this on Easter Sunday, and so tomorrow on Monday the 22nd I'll be getting a Sainsbury's delivery to my student house, and in it I've got some stuff to make some pretty standard recipes that I usually make, like vegetarian spag bowl with corn mince and spam with fried egg spam with fried eggs, chips and peas. But one thing I thought of that I would do that I would just kind of make up on the spot is chicken and chorizo stew with flageolet and haricot beans and red skin potatoes.
Very nice.
And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have that over the course of the first few days of this coming week with either some cheese boulet or artisan white sourdough bread from Waitrose, probably.
No, that sounds great.
And
yeah, I haven't really been experimenting that much, though I did act as one of the main chefs at the barbecue the other night.
Yeah, although you did say like you were the only like major like vegetarian.
Yeah, it was weird because I'd sort of communication kind of got the impression that I wouldn't be the only one and that I should bring like some stuff for other people. So I brought like 2 big lumps of halloumi and a whole load of vegetarian sausages and a massive pot of homemade hummus.
Ah.
And I was kind of left to eat all of it.
Oh,
Not that I did. I brought some back, but still.
Oh, that's gutting. Like,
yeah.
I always appreciate a good hummus myself, and just like the idea of seeing it to even slightly go to waste makes me really upset.
Yeah. But still, it actually works quite well as a sort of dip for an Easter lunch,
Mm.
which the family and I had today. And speaking of the family, we can wrap up the description of once we've wrapped up the description of your sort of life since the last episode. Do you mind if we take a brief break from recording? Because about 10 minutes ago, my sister sort of barged into the room, and we had an entirely silent conversation, from which I've gleaned that she's badgered my mother into organising an Easter egg hunt for us in the garden, and they won't proceed until I'm down there.
God.
Yeah.
Alright, fine. I wondered why that you're being slightly apprehensive there for a second, but then again, to be fair, like the last time I think your sister interrupted one of these videos, it was basically her coming in shouting something incomprehensible in German and then you shouting at her.
Yeah, that was about it.
But yeah, no, it's alright. We can continue recording a little bit. So I'll probably not edit this out. Hang on.
So let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Oh my god, why am I Alright, so Flash Presser is back now from his Easter egg hunt. Why don't you tell the audience at home how it went?
Yeah, not particularly great. For some reason, this year we'd sort of kind of forgotten about it until the evening when my little sister was sort of a bit upset that she hadn't had her Easter egg hunt. So we decided to organise one. Or they did, and then they told me halfway through our gaming session. So at this point it was already sort of late evening and it was beginning to get dark.
Yeah.
But it's just got darker and darker, obviously, until now it's completely pitch black. And we were out there with torches, and we still haven't found a fair number of the things, including, curiously enough, a small sort of Lindt chocolate bunny, which you'd think would be easy to spot because it's the biggest sort of thing hidden out there, and it's actually shiny. So my mother and sister are now out there with my mum trying to remember where she hid the things.
I bet
I'm back up here.
I bet like I'll check back like the following morning saying like, oh, how did the rest of your family's Easter egg hunt go? And you'll say like, I haven't seen them since last night.
No.
But like the last time.
Yeah, it's like playing Slender Man out there with the trees and the torches.
Yeah, I'll just like get a message from you saying like, the last time I saw them, they were getting on a coach to Gelsenkirchen.
Yeah, saying like they haven't been seen in 2 days. You're gonna have to head out there.
But I was going to ask as well, actually.
Back the hardtack and the liquor. Yeah.
What the fuck? Oh right, yeah, fair enough. But I was going to ask, what Easter eggs have you gotten so far this term?
This term, well, my father brought me back a Canadian chocolate rabbit.
Oh, nice.
From his trip to Canada, which I look forward to eating. The last time he brought me back something from Canada, it was very nice. I also got a nice little Maltesers Easter egg, which I actually brought back on my previous visit to my grandmother's. I think that's when I brought that one back.
Oh, I love Maltesers eggs.
Yeah, they are quite nice. My father got a minstrel egg and my mother got a Cadbury's twirl egg. My sister got another Maltesers. I also got a nice Lindt chocolate bunny. Yeah.
What have I gotten so far? So far I've gotten 3 eggs. I think there's a lot of my family's quite sort of not anti-religious, but just don't really care. So like it isn't a massive deal on either side of my family, really. I think from my nan and granddad I got a twirl egg, so it's an Easter egg with 2 twirl bars. Then from one of my aunties and uncles I got a Oreo mini egg, so it was a chocolate egg, but it was like it had a pack of Oreo minis with it. And then
nice.
And then from my dad and his wife I got a green and black 70% cocoa dark chocolate egg, which I was just like so happy about because I bloody love dark chocolate. And then I really wanted a celebrations egg, so I might just be really greedy and get myself one, or a Lindt one, possibly.
Yeah, on Tuesday I'm going to have to head out and pick up one or two half-price Lindt chocolate rabbits.
Yeah, because after this weekend they'll start to like chop them down in price, won't they?
Yeah, definitely.
Like that's what I always. Are you on World of Tanks, by the way?
Yeah, I'm just sort of logging on now. My
Right.
computer shut down because it overheated.
Oh God. But
Yeah, because I'd left World of Tanks on and everything,
Okay.
and the internet with the page on the latest football results. Yeah, I've got it on my bed
Oh yeah.
rather than at my desk, so the cooling vents aren't as effective as they might otherwise have been.
I was going to say, if you put it on your bed, put it on top of something like, say, a bit of mesh, or maybe a bit of foam or something, so it is in contact with the fabric on your bed, because
Yeah.
then it will at least filter the heat a little bit more effectively.
Hold on, I've got a fairly solid sort of piece of foam cardboard here, and this ought to do the trick.
But yeah, I was going to say actually, speaking of the thing of getting a reduced price like chocolate after Easter weekend, I always do that sort of certain kind of thing just after Christmas, because around Christmas, of course, in the supermarkets in the UK, they bring out like loads of gift boxes, whether it's to do with, Lynx antiperspirant or like, alcohol. Like say, if you get like you can get like branded like tumbler glasses with like a single bottle of Copperberg or something like that.
Can you send us a platoon invite quickly?
Yeah, sure.
So we can get on to playing again, so the viewers at home have something vaguely entertaining to look at.
And usually those sort of things are quite a few quid around Christmas, but like I always wait until a week or two after Christmas when they're like barely a couple of pounds. And like I've gotten so many good deals out of that, it's great.
Yeah, I'm sure in Germany it's sort of basically exclusive to the Christmas merchandising and so on. It's basically exclusive to food. You rarely see sort of like shaving products and stuff like that specifically advertised for Christmas kind of thing.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I don't know, to some extent I think it's because there's slightly less of an American influence in Germany, so there's slightly less of the commercialization of it.
Yeah.
And also, Germany is still much more of a Christian nation than Britain is.
Yeah.
So they take their religious holidays a lot more seriously than we do. Which is ironic, given that they are a completely secular nation, whereas we still have state religion. Yeah, Britain is so much more... Well, I want to say atheist, but the fact of the matter is we're pagans more than anything.
Plus, like, Britain is so diverse at this point that kind of saying we have a state religion is kind of a bit redundant, to be honest.
It's been a bit redundant for about 200 years, and everyone knows it.
Yeah. So, speaking of England, actually, we kind of said before the podcast... before we started recording the podcast, we were going to talk a quick bit about the most recent football results since the prediction video we did recently.
Yes, that's right.
Needless to say, a couple of our predictions didn't go according to plan. I genuinely thought the FA Cup final would be between Manchester City and Wolverhampton Wanderers. Instead, Watford ended up pulling off one of the greatest footballing comebacks of the last 2 years. And there was a few shocks in the Champions League as well. So
definitely.
But first off, let's start off with your opinion of how Southampton have been doing recently.
Southampton, well, they haven't had too nice a time of it, have they? They lost in their match on the 13th of April, as I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they haven't had a major victory, or indeed, I don't think any victory in the past couple of weeks since our predictions video, have they?
No, I think Southampton are just slightly too good to go down, though, and I think they will recover and maybe survive by like a couple of points. Kind of similar to last season, although you guys need to buy a bloody striker.
Yeah. Now, I sort of think that there is... I think the position of Southampton is due more to the strength of the other teams than the weakness of the team itself. But that's a bit of tautology, really, I suppose.
Yeah, kind of. I feel like there's a couple of teams in the Premier League who are a bit like that. I feel like it's particularly the case with Burnley and well,
Uh,
for a while I thought it was going to be the case with Fulham, but then they just kind of completely went off the edge of a cliff. But yeah, similarly, well, I mean, it's kind of been a bit more 50-50 for Charlton in down in the third tier of English football. I think since the video that we had since I put up that predictions video, we've won two and lost one. We're still kind of pushing
yeah,
for automatic promotion to the Championship, which is the second tier
yeah.
of English football. So, kind of fingers still crossed.
Yeah, so I tell you what team. Well, actually, to be fair, Southampton did defeat Wolverhampton, didn't they? 3-1 in the Premier League
Yeah,
on the 13th of April. They've lost a couple of matches. They lost to Liverpool and Newcastle, but they did win over Brighton. And now there's a team that has been doing rather badly. What do we say to that?
yeah. So, I mean, I really Brighton are kind of a hard one to predict because kind of like Southampton, I think they'll survive it by a couple of points, but
Yeah,
they've just been garbage the
weren't they
last few weeks.
defeated 5-1 by, unless I'm much mistaken, um, wasn't it Man City? No,
Yeah,
no, sorry, it wasn't Man City. It was Crystal Palace. That's it.
that was several years ago.
Was it? Hang on, let me just check the results for. Um, let me just check the results again for.
I think Brighton and Palace have played each other three times so far this season. I think Palace won one of their league games, Brighton won the other, and then Brighton knocked Crystal Palace out of the FA Cup. So it's been a bit topsy-turvy in that regard.
Yeah, that's true.
But aside from English football, what about the well, I mean, to a certain degree involving English football to some degree. What about the Champions League quarter-final between Manchester City and Tottenham Hotspur?
Sorry. Yeah, I have to say I didn't see that one.
It was yeah, I didn't get to see it on live, but I saw the highlights of it, and it's arguably one of the greatest Champions League matches of all time. Tottenham won the first leg 1-0. They lost the second leg 4-3, but still won on away goals. It's just a bizarre game, and like I know we don't talk about football a lot on here, but on this channel, but like, yeah, it's just like sometimes it can create wonderful stories.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of an amazing story, what do we think of Everton's win over Man United?
Absolutely, just well, like the thing is, I think Man United have been on a bit of downward spiral recently, but today, but like, I just logged onto Twitter today about half time, and I was like, oh, it's probably still going to be like 1-1 or something, and then it was like 2-0 Everton, and then it ended up being 4-0 to Everton in the end, and I was just like this is a Man United team who like just a couple of years ago won the Europa League, like now they're getting battered like 4-0 by Everton. It's
Yeah,
just what a fall from grace. It's like I think that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is a nice guy, but like they appointed him as their manager far too soon, and I feel it's kind of like just going to bite them in the arse now.
yeah. I mean, when you have someone like Scalia apologising for the team, then you know things have sort of gone a bit
Who?
bad.
Who?
Sorry, I can't really pronounce his name that well. I think he's a Scandinavian player. He's a United player. Let me just call it up again.
That just sounded like alien garble there. I had
It
no
did
idea.
just sound like it, didn't it?
Yeah.
It may be that I sort of didn't pronounce his name right at all, but
Are you thinking Victor Lindelof?
no, no, definitely not. Hold on.
Good. Is it Ole Gunnar Solskjaer?
Solskjaer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
him.
their,
Yeah,
that's their manager.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Sorry,
But yeah,
I just misread that.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty embarrassing anyway whenever either the player or the manager has to apologise, because that shows, like, you've just had a bad time. And I'd be quite honest, I think, like, Manchester United need to change most, if not all, of their squad to get back to where they were a few years ago.
I know. I mean, I sort of thought they would be in a strong position, but if anything, well, it's always sort of the rivalry between Man United and Man City, sort of which is sort of more of a threat, more of a force in the league. And so, my impression at first this season was that Man City would be the weaker team, but it seems like that was wrong.
Why did you think that? They just came off a season where they won the league.
Well, it was less to do with them so much as with United's stronger showing in the first couple of matches.
Oh, right, so you're kind of basing it off of this season.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
purely this season, because I'm not that well up on my football history, to be honest.
But yeah, I suppose, like, kind of first impressions do tell a lot sometimes, and I think, like, everyone was thinking, like, when Man United, I think they won it. Yeah, I think you're right. They did win their first couple of games, like, really convincingly, and then it just kind of all fell apart completely. And I think, like, while there's, to a certain degree, teams who start a season in a certain way and then that kind of characterises how the rest of their season turns out, sometimes it can also be a bit of a false flag, and I feel that's what happened with Man United. But I think that's probably the most we'll probably get out of football conversation.
I think so. Sorry, I was just really concentrating because I wanted to shoot that tiger in his lower glacis.
Don't be a kill stealer, come on now. But
Well, I didn't. I wasn't a kill stealer. I didn't get the kill.
all right, if you say so. But speaking of World of Tanks, actually,
Yes, indeed.
there's and speaking of topical topics, what about the recent proposals to update artillery?
Yes, it's not really an area that's sort of my particular area of expertise. Because oh wow, I actually killed that guy. Because I don't play artillery that much. I'm trying to work my way up the British artillery tree,
Yeah,
and I'm always worried when people say they're sort of going to nerf a particular branch in the game,
yeah,
because I sort of think I'm not one of these people who just sort of says get good, because I realise that balance is an issue.
yeah,
But particularly in a game like World of Tanks, that has some pretensions to historical accuracy, you can't just continually nerf, you can't just continually reduce the effectiveness of a particular branch simply because people find it harder to deal with.
yeah.
And I think artillery is important in the game because it prevents sort of camping, essentially.
I mean, like, you just kind of have to look at the Marder 3, which is a lower tier, like, German tank destroyer, and at one point it was arguably pound for pound and tier for tier one of the best tank destroyers in the game, at dealing with tanks around or near the same tier that were arguably much more threatening in an upfront battle. And as a result of people not being able to deal with it so well, or perhaps it was a bit more of a complex tank to drive than some other tank destroyers at that tier, it was ultimately nerfed to hell and back, and now it's quite average, if not quite poor, actually.
Yeah, similar with story with the Jagdpanzer 4, one of my former favourites. And also, particularly with because this isn't the first time that artillery gameplay has been tweaked in World of Tanks, is it?
No, it was a
One of the major. It was shortly before before I started playing, or shortly after,
yeah, it was about
several years ago.
it was probably about a year maybe before you started playing the game. We had update, I think it was 8.6, and that was the first really big shift in artillery reworking. And basically what that did, broadly speaking, was reduce the accuracy and speed of reloading of a number of artillery units in World of Tanks. And you could kind of see the reasoning as to why Wargaming did it, but at the same time they perhaps approach the issue of artillery being overpowered in too much of a heavy-handed way. And as a result, a number of artillery units went from being overpowered to just being kind of toothless. And I feel like if they'd perhaps taken a more longer-term approach to tackling the issue, then we probably wouldn't even be here talking about this now, and the issue would have been resolved a long time ago.
Yes, indeed. I feel particularly the lower tier French tank, the French artilleries, which I tried out at the time when I started playing the game. As I recall, they had been particularly reduced in their penetration because they're so fast firing and accurate.
And the thing is that artillery in World of Tanks has always characterised itself as having a large range of area of effect and not necessarily always being for accuracy, and just kind of being the support class. And the thing is that's perhaps more pertinent with French artillery, because unlike the artillery of other nations, the French artillery doesn't have large splash radiuses with their shells.
Yes.
And they don't have huge amounts of alpha damage on each individual shot. Instead, the most defining thing about the French artillery in World of Tanks is that it's fast, accurate, and fast firing, but they have decent penetration on their shells, but they sacrifice that for power, explosion radius, and impact. And so taking away kind of a bit of the penetration and reload time of the French artillery was just bizarre, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, as well, they also have some of the most flat shell trajectories as well. So, in city environments, like the one we just fought in, French artillery is near to useless, to be quite honest.
Yes. That's the thing. Wargaming are well known for combining different styles of gameplay, notably carrier gameplay in World of Warships is a strong example.
Yeah.
And it's another thing that I recently had to rework, and I rather like the idea. And it creates a whole variety of gameplay that would otherwise be completely lost. And I think World of Tanks would be absolutely stuck without its artillery.
And yeah, and I at the very least, even if they fuck it up, I at least admire the ambition, drive, and attempt to diversify gameplay by introducing different types of units that depart from the traditional norm.
Yes, indeed. But I think Wargaming's recent announcements about it have rather allayed my fears that they're going to proceed solely by reducing the effectiveness of the artillery. I think there are plans to rework a couple of maps as well, if I'm not much mistaken, which would help a lot.
Yeah.
Because some maps, like you say, artillery is virtually useless.
I think...
And in some, it can be overwhelming.
Here's the thing. I don't think that going after artillery directly is perhaps the best course for all of the artillery units. Perhaps it is for some of them, but I could be inclined to agree with you that it's probably more of a fundamental reason to do with other mechanics in the game, because
yes,
because artillery has always been introduced as a means of reducing the amount of camping that people do and producing an extra line of players to work up, and a different way of playing support roles in World of Tanks. And broadly speaking, I think it has done that effectively, but I would be remiss to say that it's done it 100% effectively and that there's not been any issues with it in the time that I've been playing World of Tanks, at least. So while I don't think a wholesale fundamental change to how artillery works is necessary, I do think the way it can operate on certain maps is perhaps useful towards resolving some of the issues of it arguably still being overpowered. Although
yes.
what I found quite interesting was when Wargaming recently did their throwback server to classic World of Tanks before the physics update of 1.0.
Yes, indeed.
one part of that test server was that artillery on the server behaved just like how it did before. I think it was a 8.6 or might have just been before 1.0, and as a result, a number of people found, quite strangely enough, that even though, of course, like, the past of World of Tanks wasn't as rose-tinted as they thought it had, I did hear of a number of people saying that they preferred how artillery used to behave in World of Tanks. And, not to be like Mr. Hipster and go against the societal norms, but I don't really understand that, because they kind of were just completely overpowered and could just one-shot you quite easily. And don't get me wrong, I do think artillery still has a lot of reworking needed in its current state in World of Tanks to be in order to be considered truly balanced. But it just like there's a reason why Jingles keeps calling artillery in the olden days of World of Tanks the bad old days of the bad old days, or however he says it.
Yeah. No, I can't recall precisely what Jingles says, but yeah, one change that I think is particularly good is the reduction in the number of artillery pieces in each game, and the fact that you can only have one artillery piece per platoon. Because when you have 3 artillery in a platoon, all firing coordinated, that can be sort of guaranteeing the win for whichever team happens to have them.
Yeah, because artillery is quite temperamental, but if you have an artillery platoon that are well coordinated, you can cause all kinds of havoc. I would just say though, like, not to keep unanimously defending big gaming companies all the time, but like, if I could just protect or like stand in defence of wargaming once more. Another reason why I think like sometimes people aren't necessarily correct when they say that artillery is worse now than it used to be, is that keep in mind, regarding that issue you just stated about like reducing the number of artillery pieces in each match, there was once a point where there was no limits on how many artillery units you could have in one match. And I remember one time Jingle showed a clip of a World of Tanks match several years ago where I think there was something like 12 artillery pieces on one side and 11 on the other. And so you're thinking there's like a number of 7 tanks in the match overall who aren't artillery pieces, and it's just like, who would want to move? Like, the moment you move, you're just going to get buried in an avalanche of German and Russian high explosive. It's not fun.
Yeah, no, the only map that I can think of where that many artillery pieces, and of course on both teams, would be fun, would be the map that you only get in the first 2 or 3 tiers.
Yeah.
And I can't quite remember what it's called. It's sort of set in, I think it's southern France, and it's this map that is a valley with a couple of houses in the middle, and the teams spawn on the cliffs on each side, and there's only like 2 paths up, so you just have a massive artillery duel from one side of the valley to the other.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's not perfect, but it could be worse. I mean, the thing is, I don't like to continuously defend wargaming, all the time 100%. Not in the sense that, like, I hate them, because I don't hate them. I just dislike a large number of decisions they've made in the past, quite considerably. But I feel like sometimes I have to play devil's advocate, because while some of their decisions could be considered very sort of haphazard and somewhat evil, like sometimes they can be considered, I think, a necessary evil, and I think this is one of them. Like, these artillery changes are not going to be popular with everyone, but I think technically speaking they are going to be possibly quite necessary in the long run to how artillery successfully functions in the game as a broadly balanced aspect of it. And look, let's not kid ourselves. A large number of parts of the game aren't going to be 100% balanced for quite some time without some considerable tweaking, because this is still an ongoing game that has been in release for nearly a decade. So, there's still a bit of work. Just don't blindly follow everything that wargaming do. Don't blindly accept everything they do. But have a little bit of patience, because you've got to hope it will sort of get sorted out soon. Or at least that's what I hope anyway.
Yeah, I do too. I'm maybe slightly less on side with wargaming on this one.
Yeah.
Because, I think I maybe like playing artillery just a little more than you do. And I think that it might be good for artillery players as well, I do worry that the change was primarily motivated by the need to appease sort of non-artillery players.
Right. That's... Yeah, I guess I can see your point. In what sense are you saying that?
I'm saying simply that it's not the case that lots of artillery players have been complaining about sort of flat shell arcs and whatever, and so they're rebalancing it because of that. They are rebalancing quite simply because because people have been complaining about artillery striking them seemingly without warning, despite the fact that that's exactly what artillery is supposed to do. It's supposed to keep people moving, and it's supposed to sort of make you duck and cover. And of course, it's the same weakness as any sort of high-powered weapon has, and it's less maneuverable. So if you employ proper tactics and sneak up on it, then it's obviously very easy to defeat artillery. And that's sort of the thing where I just think that it's rather unfortunate that they have to change it, simply because it's doing a good job of what it's supposed to do. I think maybe not a good job, but it's doing what it's supposed to do. Whether it's doing a good job is up for debate.
If that is the case, though, then don't you think it could do with maybe a little bit of rebalancing to maybe at least try and make sure it 100% achieves the aim that you think it's achieving? Because I think we can agree that, while it does broadly achieve it, it's not entirely 100% efficient.
Yeah, I would agree. But the motivation is the thing. The change is being motivated not by the desire to necessarily improve artillery gameplay, but the desire to appease a particularly vocal section of the fan base, possibly based on the fact that World of Tanks player numbers aren't as strong, or at least haven't been as strong as they have been historically at points. I mean, I've seen some YouTubers discussing, whether or not World of Tanks may be showing the symptoms of, the decline that happens to many a free-to-play game, where only sort of some hardcore fans are going to be left. And that will then, of course, just be a snowball effect, where the more hardcore the fan base gets as it gradually shrinks, the more wargaming will have to cater particularly to this vocal minority, and the less easy it will be to get new people into the game.
I think, yeah. But do you not think that by addressing some of these perceived issues that it would resolve this downturn in player-based numbers?
Well, that's something that we're just going to have to wait and see, though, aren't we?
Yeah.
I don't really think we can predict that. I think that World of Tanks may be showing the decline that some things do, and of course many video games bounce back from that. League of Legends is a good example of something that lost a large section of the fan base for a while simply because of fatigue. But I've been playing World of Tanks for going on 5 years now.
Yeah.
And I have to say, at no point have I seen a match where artillery played such a decisive role that it was ridiculous. And it certainly isn't a regular thing where artillery really is that decisive. It's just a different way of playing.
Yeah.
It's not a trump card. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's just a different way of playing the game. And hold on. Look at that. One of the farmhouses has glitched out and is now sort of hovering over the fields.
What are you talking about? Where?
Well, in the background, in the sort of skybox, one of the sort of low houses is kind of flying. It's weird. I mean, if you sort of look just like a little bit, sort of 1 o'clock high in the sky, there's a farmhouse floating there. At least I'm seeing one. Maybe you're not. Maybe it's my computer rather than the map glitching out. But still.
Maybe it's because of that tornado.
Yeah. I don't know. But
hang
it's
on,
like just above
I mean,
the church.
Church? What church?
Oh, whoops! Sorry, no, my fault. No, that was weird because it looked really strange. But the buildings in the city hadn't loaded in yet, and the roof of one of them loaded in first.
I was just thinking, oh my god, he's finally fucking snapped.
That was weird.
You sure you're okay?
Not entirely.
That's not encouraging. Oh, dear me. But so yeah, what are you So, what I mean, like, what are your hopes for? What do you, in a very like brief sense, what do you hope for the future of World of Tanks for at least the next 2 or 3 years?
I hope that something happens external to World of Tanks itself that rekindles interest in the game. Something like, and there needs to be another film, like Fury was a massive boost. So I think there needs to be something like that. Something needs to happen again to sort of fire up the public imagination. And I think it's also a matter of fashion, because online multiplayer games are always going to be good, particularly for streamers and so on, so that's going to get the popularity up. But at the moment, it's the sort of hero shooter multiplayer online game that's really popular. And a sort of grungy, semi-realistic thing like World of Tanks just can't compete with that. So I think World of Tanks is just going to have to kind of weather the storm, really.
I feel like, to a certain degree, there's also an element of a bit more closer to home. I think that World of Tanks, across the board, could do with having some more like seasonal events that are perhaps a bit more higher profile, because many people have also argued that the last couple of years they haven't really been much to note about, and I'm inclined to agree with that. So if we go back to something like, say, the Christmas event for 2016, which was a smash hit, then perhaps, you know, this slide in player numbers might not be completely rested, but like it could be partially solved, you know, and it might help to at least stabilise the slump a bit. I mean, that's the thing, like, we can only assume sort of how these kind of possibilities could solve an issue, but like, the reality is many of them may just simply arrest it or like take the edge off a bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think at some point there needs to be another major graphics update, and something, you know, it just has, things go through cycles of popularity. And I think World of Tanks is too big to die completely, so inevitably at some point it's going to come back.
Yeah.
And be as popular as ever.
I mean, like, if anything, like you said, we've seen it with League of Legends, and League of Legends is a game notorious for having certain balancing issues and a very toxic community, and yet somehow after a slump between 2014 2017, it's come back and it's now got just as strong as ever in terms of both its community, its online player base, and its appeal in both the scenes of esports and live streaming. So who knows? Definitely. You know, it's a crazy old world. Anything could happen.
Definitely. League of Legends is obviously helped by having a very solid formula. And I suppose you're right. If World of Tanks can properly solidify its gameplay formula, with artillery obviously being the crux of the matter, then that will go a long way.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the entire crux of the matter, but it's certainly a big one.
Yeah. I think we've sort of covered that fairly effectively. Do we have any sort of other major topics to move on to, or are we, or do you think we should finish up with a game either in the Togs or the Churchill Threes?
Let's go for the Churchill Threes. That's an old classic.
I think so.
So yeah, I mean, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
as always, be sure to check out any of my social media platforms that I put in the video description below. If you've liked this video, leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. And also comment, especially if you want to see not just if whether or not it's in regards to topics of discussion on future episodes of the podcast, or if it's just for any other videos in general on this channel. And also be sure to check out Phil's book review channel in the video description below as well. And also tell us what you guys think of the issues that we've discussed in this video. If any of you are so inclined.
Nothing we like more than reading comments.
Yeah, in theory, anyway. Some of them get quite weird.
Well, on our videos we do.
Yeah, I mean, I spent the good part of on and off of a couple of days recently, arguing with the guy on one of my For Honor review, and I'm not above admitting I got a few things wrong in that video, but it was just they stated oh, you didn't talk about the balancing issues in the game at all, and I was one of my main points was that some of the classes might be a little bit stronger than others, and the internet connection isn't always great on the game. And then they just backpedaled and started saying how that was irrelevant, and that I was not talking about some other apparently critical point. And I was just what the fuck am I doing here? I might as well just pick my nose and I'd get more out of that as a fucking fulfillment activity. It's YouTube comments are a fickle thing, because sometimes they can be very enriching, but sometimes they can feel like pulling your fingernails out with a toothpick.
Come on. Sorry, just my aim was constantly being thrown off by that T1 heavy that rammed into my side. Never mind. Yeah, no, comment sections are interesting. I mean, I read a lot of webcomics.
Yeah.
And in pretty much all of them, the comment sections are quite fun. Everyone's just saying that they like the latest update and complimenting the art style. And occasionally there's something genuinely interesting. And also on DeviantArt, which is a website that I frequent quite a lot, there's always a comment section, and yeah, it's always fun to read them there. And it's not a toxic community, unlike some that I'm sure you would know of.
Depends on which part of DeviantArt you're on.
Yeah, I know. That's what I hear, because I remember I Hate Everything did a video on it where he sort of said that, the community is one of the worst aspects of DeviantArt, and I was a little bit surprised by that, because I have not personally seen it, but then again, I kind of frequent
very particular parts of the site.
Very particular parts of it, yeah. So maybe not like the My Little Pony segment or whatever.
Oh, you have no idea.
Or the Sonic, the Sonic fan base.
Oh, the Sonic section is just a fucking gold mine.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I feel like sometimes I feel like I'll hear someone famous in the gaming scene, say Egoraptor, say criticise the Sonic fan base or the Sonic franchise for some particular aspect, and I'll think, come on man, that's a little bit harsh. But then I'll spend literally a couple of minutes browsing the Sonic section of DeviantArt, and I'm just you know what? I completely agree with him. He is absolutely 100% correct. What the fuck is half of this shit? What the fuck was that?
I have no idea.
Oh, it's a...
You just advanced really confidently and then you immediately died.
Yeah, well, typical Britishness anyway. But yeah, as always, be sure to check out the social media platforms and other YouTube channels in the video description below. And yeah, stay safe, have fun with whatever you're doing, don't do anything we wouldn't do. And stay tuned for any future episodes of the Gitcast podcast and my upcoming renewal of the For Honor playthrough. Until next time, I've been Gitbag Great with
Flash Suppressor,
and
still engaged in combat. Hold on,
and
die, you bastard! There we go.
Well, I mean, again, something that can just easily be taken out of context. But we will see you guys next time. Have fun and stay safe, and yeah, bye bye for now.
Bye bye.
Glorious. And a happy Easter as well.
You too.
No, just saying that to the audience.
Yeah, sorry, that was just instinctive
Oh,
right there.
fucking God.